is an acronym. T stands for what? Time. Because their number one fear and my number one fear has to do with what? By the way, how long could this step take? Did you notice that I hung out here a little bit? Because what I don't want to do, what he could have said is, no, I'm just kind of busy today. Let's suppose he had said that. I could have come back and said, Joe, I guess my concern is that, let's suppose this meeting, for whatever reason, you wanted to continue a little bit longer. Anything on your calendar that would prevent you from doing that? And if I get him to say no, it will now be inappropriate for him to say, listen, we're running out of what? Okay? By the way, if he says, I've got to be on a call at 10, and his concentration will begin to fade at 5 till, and I remind him that I may look at my watch to prevent that from happening, guess what I've done? I've managed and or eliminated the pressure. By the way, as a professional, if you only have 25 minutes, and that's exactly how much time you have, like it or not, when would you like to know that? And who would manage the time very efficiently? It's your job to do that. Okay. Number 2 is I got out whose agenda? See, many times they want you to get to what? See, the higher they are up the food chain, the more likely they are to want you to get to the point. And the most important point is whose point? So guess how I put in control here? See, think about those times you've been in a sales call, and pardon me for saying this, but the salesperson is the talking head. And instead of listening, you're trying to remember your questions. You're trying to remember your questions. So why not go ahead and allow them to ask their questions? Here's what it sounded like. Joe, let's assume it's 5 till 10. Maybe this meeting's over. I guess I'd be curious, what questions do you have? What would you like to hear from me? What challenges, I could even lead him a little bit. What challenges are you having specifically with your sales guys that you'd want to talk about? We could explore the next 25 minutes. And now guess who begins to talk? Okay. When he talks, interesting thing, when someone speaks, they begin to feel as though they're in control of it. You know, that's what I wanted. See, the other thing you feel down here is no control. No control. Guess what I'm going to give him? The feeling of what? He's controlling the time, he's controlling the agenda, he's controlling whether or not we get back together. And I gave him an out. I gave him an out, didn't I? Joe, here's what I know is, if we get to 10:55 or 9:55, we may both decide it doesn't make sense for me to even come back and see you. I mean, could that happen? I mean, we may decide that we're not the best venue for you guys to train. If that happens, you okay letting me know that? It's not completely okay if that happens. Completely okay. All I'm trying to do is eliminate what? If I, by the way, element number 1 in that first compartment was that of building what? Trust. You want to build trust? Give them control. Give them the feeling of control. Now, sometimes, if you're not careful, this is where you begin to talk and you begin to answer their lofty agenda. Okay? So, let's do a stutter step in here and say, pretty lofty agenda, Joe. If you don't mind, I'd like to ask you a few questions. Make sure we're focused. And now I'm not giving a pitch. Here's another very valuable element of this. I was in a meeting, corporate meeting, with a lot of big muckety mucks. Okay? A lot of big muckety mucks. And I see a guy walks in very late at the back of the room texting like this. Oh, well, we have phone back. Texting just like this, okay? And he heard me say this. And later he said, you got me right there. He said, when I heard that you were going to start asking questions, or you might ask some questions, I knew I had to put my technology up and pay attention because I didn't want to get busted. And he's the guy that became my advocate. And he paid attention and helped me get the deal. But it was a subtlety, right? Getting permission to ask questions, which slows them down a little bit because you're there to qualify. Okay? And next is outcomes. Outcomes. And this is the most fascinating part. One of those outcomes is no. By the way, listen very carefully. If a deal is not going to happen for whatever reason, not going to happen, can't happen, when would you like to know that? And by the way, when you make people comfortable with that, when you demonstrate you're comfortable with that, guess what it does? Eliminates the pressure, gives the feeling of control, and the likelihood that you're going to sell them something that they don't need or waste their time. And notice how that sets up the yes. Now this is a yes for a predetermined next step. What is your next step in your first call? Is it a follow-up conversation? Is it a follow-up meeting? Is it the inclusion of another person? Is it a decision on something minor? Or after 3 calls, is it the ultimate decision, yes or no, on the deal? See, if you don't help them anticipate the necessary next step that you require, don't be angry when they put you off and tell you to blindly send them a proposal. And by the way, is your proposal valuable? If you're going to give them a proposal, would it be reasonable for them to, in turn, give you some time to come back and discuss it? And if they won't do that, are you sure they're prospects? If you've got a lot going on, are you sure you want to do that? Now, the one we're trying to eliminate is the one where they say they want to think it over, which usually comes from the fact that we haven't managed that step. We haven't managed that step.